in 1990, the school year 1992-93, my family and I moved to Hawaii on an exchange program to the same one the Marlers have come here from, BYU Hawaii. And I met the Marlers then, and it was like being thrust into a foreign planet. You know, the heavy air, how wet it was, warm all the time. And I've watched Myrna since she's come here, and even on a balmy day when it was something like 50 degrees, she was had her overcoat on and everything, all bundled up. So I don't know if her blood has changed by now, but she's had to go to the same accommodation that I had to go through when we went to Hawaii. And I think that, I was just talking to her, and I think that one of her most remarkable achievements is what she just said to me about raising seven boys in Hawaii, which any of you who've lived there know some of the difficulties of that. She grew up in Seattle, Washington, and was converted to the church at the age of 13 with her family. She completed her master's and doctoral degrees at the University of Hawaii in American Studies. Became a faculty member at BYU Hawaii in 1995. Her dissertation concerning young adult literature written by, and her dissertation concerned young adult literature written by and for African Americans since the Civil Rights. And the title of that is Representations of the Black Male, His Family and Community in 3 Young Adult Writers for African Americans, Mildred D. Taylor, Alice Childress, and Rita Williams Garcia. She's the overseer of the creative writing program at BYUH and the faculty advisor for the annual school literary journal, the Kulumana. She's published in Signal, in the Allen Review, which is Association of Literature for Adolescents. Okay. And the title of that was The Problem of Poverty. I'm stumbling over my tongue. I need the water here today. In Problem of Poverty in Young Adult Literature, Alex Childress, Gary Soto, and Virginia Ewer-Wolf, who happens to be a writer coming to the Young Writers Conference this summer. She's also published in Reader's Breaks, Dialogue, a Journal of Mormon Thought, BYU Hawaii Profile Magazine, Kulumanu, and the International Magazine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She has won the Honolulu honorable mention in the Honolulu Magazine Fiction Contest, and also honorable mention in the D.K. Brown Fiction Contest, which is here in Utah. Please welcome with me Myrna Marler.
Well, compared to some of the other speakers that have been here this year, I feel very unimpressive, but thank you students for showing up. I've been debating about what I wanted to read first. A couple of years ago I decided, when I weighed 260 pounds, I decided that I was going to lose 100 pounds in the year 2003. So I started keeping an extensive journal with that thought in mind. What happened was that it became a journal about where I lost 30 pounds and then gained it all back, and then investigated gastric bypass surgery, which I eventually went through with. But I think, we've had so many memoirs about people who are anorexic and people who are bulimic and people who are drug addicts or people who were raised by crack cocaine addicts, and I thought nobody really writes about being fat in America and what it's like to lose weight. And so I have probably 700 pages of manuscript about that, and I'm just going to read you a few excerpts so that you'll get a little bit. The manuscript that I have is in serious need of editing, so it's not in its final processes. January 5, 2002. So after a week of eating, drinking, and making merry, I arose from my bed at 7 a.m. this morning, ate a bagel, drank a Coke, read the newspaper, then drove to Weight Watchers just before 8 o'clock. I wanted to sneak in early, get the bad news, and sneak out again before anyone else saw me. I'll stay when I'm more into the diet thing, or at least when my stomach doesn't precede my entrance into any room by a foot or so, like I was riding an elephant or something. I weighed in at 259 pounds, which is 1 pound less than my absolute worst weight ever. Is that a cause for rejoicing, or what? For the last year and a half, the meetings have been held in the Kahuku Community Center, a shabby place with a kitchen, one room big enough to hold a ball in, and another room big enough to hold a meeting of 12 to 15 people. We used to meet in a big room, but now the group has settled into about 15 regulars, more or less. This little room has a cement floor, folding chairs, a chalkboard, and cinder block walls. It's exactly like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting room, minus the coffee urn and the cigarette smoke. Sometimes skinny acquaintances have asked me what goes on in those meetings, and I claim that we all stand up and say, "Hi, my name is Myrna, and I overeat." I'm not sure if they get my little joke or not. Actually, the meetings consist of a weigh-in where if you've lost weight, everyone around you, including the lecturer, shouts and jumps up and down in joy for the lucky loser. If you've gained weight or stayed the same, the lecturer's voice falls to a sympathetic murmur, and she says things like, "You need these plateaus to make sure you're firmly toned," as if. Or, "I bet you'll have a big loss next week." Or, "This isn't a setback, this is just a small delay." Then everyone gathers for the meeting. Small weight loss awards are handed out to those who have reached various milestones, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, etc. Do you know how many times I've gotten a 25-pound award in the form of a red bookmark with a 25 circled at the bottom? Let's just say I have more bookmarks than I actually use. Everybody dutifully claps and cheers, but those who have gained or not lost do so with heavy hearts. Then the lecturer gives a short motivational speech filled with slogans such as, "Believe it to achieve it." Then there's a short period of sharing among the group of weight loss tips, of successful moments, of avoiding temptation, or confession of terrible sins. I ate an entire lemon pie. Then the meeting breaks up. We put the chairs away, close the windows, pick up trash, and exit, either full of resolve for the coming week or planning to stop at Foodland for the weekly binge, depending on just where you are in the dieting process. The more rah-rah and corny a leader is, the more successful she's likely to be. While I'm at my fattest, I slump in my folding chair, my hair not combed, wearing a t-shirt and a pair of polyester stretch pants, my face free of makeup, glasses instead of contact lenses. I don't contribute to the sharing, and I sit there wishing the meeting would just get the hell over with. As I actually lose weight, often very rapidly because I'm motivated, I gradually become more and more of a know-it-all. You can't shut me up. I'm chock full of good dieting advice. Then later I begin to slide off the wagon. I sit there planning my once-a-week binge. Later, as I begin to gain some weeks and lose only a little other weeks, the binge tends to become a twice-a-week, then a 3 times a week event. Then I start to miss meetings. Then some emergency looms in my life. Next to last time it was my father's death. Last time it was a horrible, long-lasting cold. And I decide to take a little vacation from the stress of weight loss, during which I gain all the weight back. Eventually self-disgust and worry about my health take over, and I try again. January 14th, hunger, gnawing, grinding, constantly reminding you of its presence, hunger. I had it last night. It kicked in a couple of hours after an ample dinner and grew steadily worse until by 10:30, I was thinking this diet thing was a really bad idea. I never have endured long hunger well. It's an unpleasant sensation and one as easily fixed as taking aspirin for a headache. A commonsensical thing to do. When my stomach rumbles in the late evening hours, I feel perfectly justified in getting up and rummaging around in the kitchen until I find some morsel of food to sate the beast sinking its teeth in my internal organs. Only when I've been passionately fixated on the idea of dieting has hunger seemed like a good sign. It meant I was suffering for beauty. It meant that the diet was working. My body would have to cannibalize its own fat to satisfy the acids burning holes in my stomach lining. It meant I was strong, stronger than my cravings, stronger than my base bodily needs. I think only young women have these feelings. I'm older now, and I'm not interested in suffering. Our Weight Watchers leader, Winter, is about my age. She's lost a ton of weight and is as slim as a pencil, except that her knees and lower legs look disproportionately heavy. But hey, only 5% of the world's females have a model's body, or even the potential to have a model's body. Winter dyes her hair, puts on expensive makeup with a deft hand, and wears skimpy dresses, which reveal her bare arms, much of her thighs, and all of her knees. She has gone to the trouble of staying lightly tanned, and I suppose she imagines she presents an impeccable role model to all us fatties. However, in spite of all her exercise and tanning, her skin hangs loose upon her bones. It crinkles where it shouldn't, much like crepe paper, painfully reminding all of us that middle age can be delayed, but not staved off forever. Winter would look better if she covered up a bit more. A lesson I intend to remember 100 pounds from now. Okay, January 19th, 2002. Today something happened that has never happened to me before in recorded Weight Watchers history. I went to our shabby little meeting, eager to discover how much weight I'd lost, only to discover that I'd gained 2 pounds. I'm trying to think of a simile for the sensation of growing disbelief at what the numbers register. Dismay as you recall all the sacrifices you made so you would lose weight this week, drinking all that water, making several trips to the bathroom every day, suffering hunger pangs, eating enough salad to qualify as a rabbit, then anger at your body's betrayal. It's so easy to gain weight. Why does it have to be so freaking hard to lose it? Then embarrassment and pain as you realize others are going to come to the meeting and have big losses, big successes, which you're expected to cheer and clap for, and the realization that you wasted a whole week of your life, not only wasted, but regressed. That 2 pounds that have to be lost all over again. Maybe the best simile is being told that someone you love died suddenly while window peeping or shooting drugs. I solved the problem in my usual manner. I choked back tears, picked up my purse, and like Elvis, left the building. Winter had been standing there trying out the usual explanations. Did you journal? Thus turning a noun into a verb, peculiar to the Weight Watchers culture, and to which I answered, no, I never journal. I eat the same thing every day. Maybe you ate too much salty food and you're retaining water. Maybe you built up muscle because of all the exercise you've been doing. To this I say ha, and double ha. At this point I consider it extra exercise to walk back and forth to the ladies' room 12 times a day. That'll put on in muscle all right. Anyway, as I was leaving, Winter said, please, please don't give up. I said, I'm not going to give up, but I am going to go home and cry for a while. After all, what's my alternative? To stay fat, to die young, or youngish? To hate myself forever, to lose credibility once people see me below the neck, although it's getting so my broad face and double chin reveal the truth somewhat earlier. To feel like crap spiritually and physically. What chaps me though is the idea I might have to eat less. I don't want to eat less. I want a diet, or a nutrition plan, if you will, that I can live with, that's a bit flexible, that allows for a few rewards, that doesn't feel like a hair shirt. Is that asking for too much? Maybe it is. In consideration of that, I went to McDonald's and had a bagel and a large, wonderful sugary Coke. Then I came home and crawled back into the room, or as near as I can get there these days, my bed, with the door shut. Luckily, Mike is fairly sympathetic to my emotional breakdowns. He'll put up with it for a while. January 26th, 2002. Morning arrives, gray and blustery. It's winter here in Lightyear. Misty rain spatters your head as you step outside for the morning newspaper. But you don't really care what the weather is like because today is the day. The day is the day, Weight Watchers Day. The day you have a close encounter of the most unpredictable kind with the scale. You calculate carefully what you can eat. Usually you go hungry, but you sensed this morning that a small piece of fruit would get things moving and you might lose more than you gain, literally. So you indulge, and the orange is cold and delicious and juice squirts against the tongue, and in a few minutes it brings the hoped-for results. You decide not to take a bath because you have discovered in the past that this somehow makes you weigh 1 or 2 pounds heavier than you will an hour later. Maybe water lodges in the skin cells and evaporates slowly. It's a mystery, but you've learned not to take chances. You select your supremely ugly clothes with care. Which pair of black stretch pants weighs the least? You balance them in your hand thinking. You settle on the lightest, then consider your array of t-shirts. After a long pause, you settle on one that is slightly more attractive than a plain t-shirt, and hope that it does not weigh an extra 10 ounces. You run a brush through your hair. It doesn't matter if the hair is actually clean at this point, and apply some eyeliner and lipstick over yesterday's makeup. Who cares what the other people at Weight Watchers think? You're doing this for a larger audience, for your students, for people who see you walking down the street, for future readers of your young adult novels, for the world. You arrive at the community center laughably early. Only one other car sits in the parking lot, so you pull out your latest true crime thriller, stories of psychopathic husbands who kill their wives are a favorite for some reason, and read for 10 minutes. Finally, you gather up your purse and your public face and exit the car. Winter is looking lovely this morning. She is wearing a long lacy black vest and skirt outfit that reveals her tanned arms and long neck, and in the dark hall where the scale sits, you don't notice the aging skin, just the shape of her body. Forget those oversized knees and calves. And you want to look like that. You hand over your check to the clerk, $10 a week for lifetime members like you. And it bemuses you that you're 100 pounds overweight and a lifetime member of Weight Watchers. But oh well. You wait for the fairly slim woman who arrived before you to weigh in. You hear exclamations of dismay and she emerges from the hallway looking measurably unhappier than she did a moment before. You lay your 10-pound purse aside, kick off your sandals, and get on the scales. The electronic readout dances before your eyes. At first you think you've lost 8 pounds, but no. The scale readjusts and tells you that you've barely lost 2 pounds, the same 2 pounds you gained the week before. Winter is happy for you, but you are not so happy for yourself. You realize that you may not make your goal weight by next December at this rate. You also feel that your body is laughing at you. You realize that for quite a while you are going to continue to look like that bulbous, meaty, middle-aged, bleach blonde, bespectacled, bejowled, double-chinned, and pale woman you kept catching glimpses of in mirrors and windows the night before. You hate the way you look, but she's going to be around and insisting to the world that she's you. Winter hugs you and pleads with you not to give up. You assure her you're not giving up, but you still pick up your 10-pound purse and leave. You're just not up to socializing and talking about weight with anyone. Truly, maybe you would be better off to stay, but the instinct is to flee is strong, and the car all but drives itself to McDonald's. You order a toasted bagel with cream cheese and a big sugary Coke, and you sit in the car and eat and read about a sociopathic husband for the next half hour, while your own husband thinks you're Weight Watchers being inspired. But you've heard every variation of Weight Watchers lectures over the past 30 years, and you are inspired, just unhappy. When you go home, you let your husband know how unhappy you are and fling yourself and your 10-pound purse down on the couch to mope. Your husband says kindly, "What if your goal is health, not appearance? Would that change your outlook?" You cannot believe his male ignorance. Health is certainly an issue, you inform him in unfriendly tones, but you hate the way you look. This stops him from offering suggestions, and after a while you climb the stairs for a close encounter of the most necessary kind with the womb of the bed for the next hour. Meanwhile, your husband dashes in and out, sweating from his labors around the house, periodically asking, "So what are your plans for the day?" "Grading papers," you reply in muffled tones, your face against the pillow. "Oh, okay," he says. He understands now you need to take frequent rest breaks when you're grading papers and will not make you feel guilty when he sees you reading and eating your popcorn and or salad throughout the day. January 28th. What I need to do is start including exercise into my life. I had been hoping to lose 20 pounds or so before putting all that pressure on my knees and ankles, but I've never successfully lost weight without including activity, as Weight Watchers puts it, or gut-wrenching exercise, as I put it. Before I actually start getting my body out there and moving it on a regular basis, the task of exercising seems overwhelming. I remember myself in various triumphant stages of fitness, pounding my way 5 or 6 times a week at a dead run for 5 miles, and not even breathing hard at the end. And I know what it's going to cost to reach that stage of fitness again. How do I know? Because I have reached it several times only to fall back into the sludge of fat behavior. Why is that? Probably because of the second law of thermodynamics, which is, as I understand it, that everything eventually disintegrates or becomes disordered unless energy is expended to maintain the status quo. Even more energy must be expended to improve the status quo. When one is fit, no matter how unfit one has been before, pounding around that same old track night after night can get shoved aside for a myriad of other, more sedentary activities, ones which do not require a great expenditure of energy, say watching television. Here's what I have to do to lose weight and get physically fit. I have to heave my body off the bed, where I tend to do 90% of my reading, quilting, TV watching, and yes, even eating. Round up my jogging shoes, find a pair of socks, find a pair of pants, and a white t-shirt that's not too disgusting to take out for public display. The white t-shirt is important in order to avoid being run down by a car because we don't have a track, we have a big circle. A paved avenue littered with speed bumps and parked cars that curves around the campus and is exactly 7/10 of a mile. The not too disgusting requirement stems from the very public nature of life in Laie. I've always thought living here was a little bit like being famous must be. It is impossible to go out jogging in this community without being seen by several pairs of eyes. When you weigh 250 pounds, you are not anxious for an audience, though in light EA, you're going to get one. But you would like to keep it to a minimum, which is the reason I started jogging some 17 years ago in the evening. And when I jog, I like to go between 6:30 and 8:30 p.m. Okay, so I'm actually out there, starting the physical fitness journey all over again. The night is dark, the trade winds ruffle my hair. The palm trees, black silhouettes against the deep blue sky, sway and their fronds rustle in the breeze. The air is as soft as lotion against my skin, if we're not in the midst of hurricane season. But I'm packing 100 pounds of extra baggage, so I know that if I don't want to drop dead of a heart attack and get my faculty picture on the front page of the school newspaper, I need to start slow. In the old days, this meant running from one light pole to the next, then walking to the next light pole, then running, then walking, etc. Periodically, when I felt ready, I increased the lengths of running and shortened the lengths of walking. I knew I was running too many light poles when I couldn't catch my breath, and doubled over, gasped noisily and desperately for air while fighting a surge of nausea and the reappearance of my not fully digested dinner. But I always kept the pressure on, and eventually I was running entire circles without stopping, and life was beautiful. Now I'm in my 50s. When I lost that 100 pounds 4 years ago or so, I never did get back up to the running 5-mile stage. I ran about 2.5 miles and walked vigorously for the other 2.5, which seemed to work fine, although my knees and ankles made regular protests to my pain centers. I did lose the weight, but I am pitiful now. Just walking 2 blocks has my heart in the zone, sweat drenching my hair and t-shirt, and the muscles in my thighs and calves screaming for relief. My thighs rub together and my hands swell, as all the blood in my body drains to my extremities. I'm at the stage where I have to really, really want to exercise in order to deal with the suffering that ensues. For the 2 nights, Saturday and tonight, that I've actually exercised, I have managed to walk semi-vigorously for a whole 1.5 miles. Because of this extra strain on my reserves of energy, for the first several weeks of including exercise in my daily activities, I'm extra exhausted, not to mention pinched nerves in the thighs and aching legs and sore feet until my body parts realize that I'm serious about this and quit complaining. I'm starting at a time when I'm supposed to be finishing a novel, writing a scholarly paper, grading papers, and guiding the production of the Kulamanu. It's not a good time, but then it's never a good time. However, much can be said in favor of the sense of virtue one gets from actually propelling oneself out the door and moving steadily for half an hour. Later, the sessions will increase to an hour. One comes back with hair matted, makeup only a memory, too large t-shirt damp and sagging, but one feels victorious. Plus, exercising is satisfying in a way that only comes from pushing the body to the limit and surviving. Endorphins are released into the bloodstream, creating a natural high. One feels that one has the strength of 10 because the heart is pure. Why do I keep forgetting that? It must be because humans are naturally ambivalent, always wanting 2 conflicting things at once, exercise and rest. And it's always easier to rest. You've got to want physical fitness in a most intense way, and the closer one gets to goal, the harder it is to keep the passion burning. February 3, 2002. Yesterday was Saturday, Weight Watchers Day, and I went through the usual routine when I got up, minus some of the really psycho stuff. One woman at Weight Watchers takes off her watch and glasses before getting weighed. If she could, she would take out her teeth and remove her fingernails. I was pretty sure the scales would be kind to me in ways completely undetectable to anyone else. I could tell that I must have lost some weight. My watch has been flopping around on my wrist. My 1X tops now fit over my entire stomach. The shoulder of the 2X tops now come down over the tops of my arms. And I was correct. I lost 3 pounds, bringing me down to the trim, slim weight of 249 pounds. Making a total of 10 pounds lost in 4 weeks. They tried to give me another 5-pound bookmark, but I waved it away. I already have drawers full of bookmarks commemorating 5-pound weight losses. So I stayed for the meeting. Sometimes, though, I definitely feel like an outsider. I'm not interested in trying new recipes or counting up points minute by minute, journaling in Weight Watchers speak. Some people have written records of what they've eaten for years, piled up in secret stashes in their closets and drawers. Why? I eat pretty much the same menu every day, which makes it easier to keep track. Also, I enjoy every food item on the menu, plus each has the advantage of being easily obtainable to a woman who has no time for cooking. If I need to vary, I know enough about what's required that I can make allowances. It works for me. But then, I wonder if that's why I've gained and lost my entire life. I've never fully committed myself to the Weight Watchers culture. On the other hand, who does? Some of the people at Weight Watchers, in fact most of them, are people like me who have been attending off and on for years with varying degrees of success. One woman has been coming for at least 2 years, more or less regularly, while I've been attending and falling away. She gains a pound 1 week, then loses a pound the next week. I don't think she's lost 10 pounds in the year and a half she's been coming and shelling out her $12 each time. She usually pays weeks in advance, though, which lowers the price to $11.50 or something. She brings a little steno pad and sits and dutifully takes notes throughout the discussion, is one of the most frequent contributors and complainers, knows the program backwards and forwards, but is still working on the same 10 pounds. I can't be too superior, though, since I'm still equally as far away from my goal weight as I was 2 years ago. I wonder why she keeps coming. I wonder if her husband makes her. He's kind of a sawed-off little bully who thinks men are higher on the evolutionary scale than women. He'd tell himself he was forcing her to Weight Watchers for her own good, and he'd be relatively nice about it, but the psychological pressure would be there. I sometimes wonder what if her refusal to actually lose weight isn't because he's so not so subtly pressuring her. Every 3 or 4 months he pays for her to get a new permanent. She shows up periodically smelling a permanent wave with her blonde hair twisted into a mass of brand new afro curls not worn by white women since the late 70s. He told a friend of mine that he chooses the hairdo because he's the one who has to look at her. Nice, huh? When I was that fat, flying was a particular humiliation and punishment. And I have many diatribes about flying and flight attendants. Here's just one. People always ask you about your trip. How was the plane ride? I guess they're expecting you to say fine or uneventful or there was a lot of turbulence I almost hurled. But I find all plane trips about the same, intensely uncomfortable. I'm jammed up next to a complete stranger, thigh to thigh, in a position not unlike that of a straitjacketed lunatic. I can't get out to use the bathroom unless I disturb my seatmate, who does not love being disturbed. The bathrooms are so tiny, if I were seriously inclined to claustrophobia, the stewardesses would have to inject me with Valium to get me in there. There was a lot of turbulence. I've noticed lately that there's always a lot of turbulence. What does that mean? Didn't planes used to glide through the air more smoothly? We rode through the air as if we were on the back of a monstrous bucking bronco. Anyway, the light to keep the safety belt fastened was always on. And after staggering down the aisle to use the bathroom, I noticed a lighted sign in there, "Please return to the main cabin." Like, where else are you going to go? Who's going to hang out in that 2-foot squared cubicle for 1 second longer than they have to? Unless, of course, they're deactivating the smoke alarm or lighting a bomb in their tennis shoes, in which case the return to cabin sign is irrelevant. My severely blistered feet were swelling, my legs ached up to my knees, and by the time we landed in Honolulu, I would have done anything, including murder slow-moving passengers in front of me, to get off that plane. But then, of course, once the cabin doors have actually opened and one has run the gauntlet of dragging bulky carry-ons up the crowded aisle and into the airport, one must experience the joys of the 8-mile walk to baggage claim. The Wiki bus is never around, either going or coming. Just what functions it actually performs remain a mystery, though the stewards and stewardesses claim it runs for our convenience, so we don't have to carry 1,000 pounds of luggage through unending concourses after a debilitating plane trip. The Wiki bus has never stopped for me, and wouldn't that be a great title for a book? I would have to lose 150 pounds and shrink several inches in height, maybe to about 5'1", to actually enjoy plane travel in coach class. Maybe someday I will be rich and can fly first class where the stewards are obsequious, the food is edible, and there's actually room for an adult human being in the seats. No wonder there's so much air rage. Less now, I suppose, since September 11 attacks. Show my irritation and they'll slam you in jail, and my name will be reported in the national news. Have I raved enough? Let's see, what time is it getting to be? Let me just read this one last little excerpt. One of my students, Erin, decided to do something nice for me, so without my knowledge, she took my picture one day when I was earnestly conferencing with another student. Yesterday she brought it in. I don't think thin people realize the amount of self-delusion required for a fat person to get out of bed every morning and face the day. Pictures such as the one Erin handed me tend to destroy these illusions and are not greeted with cries of joy and gratitude. They tend to be met with such phrases as, expletive deleted, "I'm huge," which was my exact response to her gift and which did not fully assure her of my undying gratitude. I was wearing a dress I've never worn much until recently. It's a patterned white cotton knit with a princess waistline and a tie and back. It descends to the middle of my calves and I never have to worry about revealing long expanses of meaty white thigh if I cross my legs. At no time, thin or fat, has it been my favorite dress, but recently it has fit much more comfortably under the bust and my arms don't bulge out from the sleeves like overstuffed sausages. That is, there's room for a little blood to circulate to my fingers. I was under the delusion that I looked professional in that dress, like someone who cared about her appearance. I've been diligently striving to give up the polyester stretch pants and polyester tops look. Yesterday I realized that wide expanse of white cotton knit that so fully covers my legs looks not unlike a Bedouin tent that could house a family of 6. Plus, I'm relatively smaller on top, so I also look like a littler, but also fat person is emerging from a huge dinosaur egg. I may never wear that dress again. Then again, I probably will. After all, what choice do I have? I'm pretty sure no other of my size 20 dresses looks any better. Poor Erin. While I'm standing there confronting my own image and gasping like a beached whale, she's telling me that she thinks I look cute. So it's a long, interesting journey. This is a short story that I wrote some time ago, and it's been published. And it's based a lot on my family experiences. It's called The Dreams I Should Remember. My mother's sighs still echo down through the length of some 30 years, reverberating even now in the empty spaces in my memories, whispering even yet in my head, the sighs of a burdened, tired woman. She sighed, lifting baskets of laundry, heavy with sodden diapers, thin towels, and sleeper legs that hung over the rim, carrying them out the back door and down the wooden stairs into the cellar where she kept the wringer washer. She sighed, hoisting the galvanized pail out of the front door to the well where she pumped the water and brought it in, sloshing wet spots on the floor on her way to the kitchen to do the dishes, and fill the water pitcher in the Frigidaire. She sighed when my sister and I tracked in mud onto her waxed linoleum floor from the creek bed behind the house. And she sighed when I asked her for a bicycle and didn't answer, her face suddenly looking as if she were thinking of something else, unpleasant and bitter. Please, Mom, please. No. But why? She was picking currants, dropping the little red berries into the bottom of her pail. The sunlight dazzled my eyes as I looked up at her. Because we can't afford it. But Mom, I said we can't afford it. I backed off. No bike, no possibility of a bike except by a miracle. But when you're 8 years old and wanting, the world seems full of possibilities, bounded only by your capacity for magic. In the soft gray light of the evenings of early summer, my sister went to bed. I lay in the bottom bunk, awake and listening to the creak of the springs as my sister dreamed of dolls with final hair. I didn't see the shadows of the bedstead chipped with tooth marks, or the window ledge beside my bed where our kitten nosed for entrance, her purring a steady rhythm as she rubbed against the glass. I saw instead the bicycle, without even closing my eyes. It was red like a fire engine, gleaming with chrome handlebars angled rakishly out of a black leather seat angled down. Then I did close my eyes to wish, squeezing them so tight with the force of my wanting, the wrinkles in my lids shot pain to my cheeks. And I clenched my fists and pressed them into my stomach. I wish, and nearly saw the bicycle materialize in front of the closet door. But not quite. I discovered bicycles and magic in the same year. I found the magic one day in the spring when I wandered out into the garage that used to be a barn and found a box of mildewed books. The pages were water-stained and smelled musty. But after a while, I didn't see the words at all, only the palace of the prince who climbed Rapunzel's hair, or the cottage of the fortunate girl whose mouth dropped pearls and diamonds every time she spoke. I saw Cinderella's glass slippers sparkling like dew in the moonlight and Alice's mirror where you could step through into a topsy-turvy world, and the normal rules of gravity didn't apply at all. I curled up in the cool April afternoons with my book by the ashes of the empty fireplace. My sister watched the television we somehow magically owned. The TV with a tiny screen and the picture of the Greyhound stationed just above the knobs. Cecil and Beanie and Howdy Doody interjected themselves from time to time into my private world, and I glanced up to see Clarabelle honking at Buffalo Bob, or Sheriff Tex playing his hootenanny. My dad, coming in from his shift at the meatpacking plant, would say, "Reading again, sis?" And I'd smile at him standing there, the shadow of his beard dark at day's end, the springy black hair tufted from his fingers, and show him the book cover. He'd say, Cinderella, isn't she the one who gets the handsome prince? They all do, Dad, I'd say patiently. My dad sat in the faded pink armchair, its back covered by a large white doily, and watched the Edward R. Murrow show before being called to dinner. He brought the set home one gray day, and my mother's lips had tightened. "Oh, Edward, no." "Oh, Helen, yes," he'd answered, steady as she glared at him, knowing she wouldn't fight in front of us and pushing it. And she'd looked away into space as if she were doing impossible calculations in her head and coming up with all the wrong answers. Ann and I had sat that day in front of the flipping test pattern, watching it thin and lengthen, grow fat and squat, while Dad fiddled with the antenna on the roof and my mother clattered pots in the kitchen. Later he'd come in smelling of rain, triumphant. But Mom sighed. Later, though, through the closed door of the bedroom, I heard them arguing. Selfish, I thought I heard her say, but her voice was pitched low, deadened by venom. And the doors were shut, so I couldn't be sure, but she couldn't be talking about my dad. Some luxuries, he said. You're an old woman. The TV had stayed. My mother never watched. Instead, nights when she was alone while Dad worked overtime and we were supposed to be asleep, she played dance music on the phonograph, her record scratchy from worn needles and 100 moves in her past. And when she saw me reading my books in front of the TV, she sighed. Yes, I believed in magic because of my books and because of the presence of that console in our living room. Proof that solid objects could materialize if you wanted them badly enough. Yet I'd never really wanted anything at all until my cousin Joyce came to stay for 2 weeks, just after school let out, and brought her bicycle. Where'd you get that? I asked her, reverent, suddenly shy of this new cousin who owned things, as she casually pulled the bicycle out of our '49 Dodge. My birthday, she said, I'll teach you to ride it. She did, and I left my cousin Joyce that summer. She'd been my special friend, not my sister's, but now she and Ann waded together in the creek or played house in the abandoned chicken coop without me. The two of them helped Mom pick the crab apples off the trees in our front yard, watched Mom cook them into juice, their eyes hanging over the boiling jam pot. Later they licked the wooden spoons. I saw them skulking sometimes in the fir trees, carrying homemade bows with fern arrows slung across their backs, faces daubed with the mauve lipstick that my mother wore, collecting pine cone wampum. I saw them eating peanut butter sandwiches and ginger snaps on the front lawn, a ragged tablecloth spread on the picnic table. The two of them were brief snapshots, caught in time, fleeing across my vision like patterns in a kaleidoscope as I sped past on Joyce's bicycle. The gravel road that dipped in a steady slope in front of our house cut off from a 2-lane highway a mile up and ended in a cul-de-sac surrounded by wild blackberry bushes and weeds 3 blocks down. Panting in the summer sun, I pushed the bike up the dirt hill, past Lance's house, past Sheridan's gate, past the place where we turned in to buy eggs, to the row of mailboxes that marked the arterial. Then I turned the bike around and pedaled swiftly homeward. But I didn't have to pedal very long before the gravity of the descending road pulled me downward, faster and faster, until by the time I whirled past the flat white bungalow that was our house, my world blurred like the leafy green foliage in the background of a close-up photograph. I knew what it was to fly, to have wings at my command, to invoke magic on demand. Over and over again, I repeated my trek up the hill, the trip downward, until the tree shadows lengthened across the road. The air chilled and my mother came to stand at the edge of our square of grass and call my name. Lindy, come for dinner and wash your hands. The world seemed a solid place, its edges clear and sharp enough to cut, when I climbed off the seat and wheeled the bicycle into the garage. All I could think of was that in less than 2 weeks, Joyce was leaving and taking her bike with her. The frogs emerged in the dampening evening air, splashing in the shallow depths of the pond in our front yard. The shapes of the trees became shadows in the dusky light. The moon bloomed in the sky so that I could barely make out my mother's outlines as she stood on our slab of a front porch in an attitude of listening and watching as she dried her hands on her apron. I looked around but thought there must be some hidden thing in the dusk that only she could see, like the times my dad carried me to bed and told me the Sandman was standing in the corner of the room. Can you see him, he'd ask. Sometimes the movement of a curtain, a puddle of moonlight on the floor would half convince me he was there, and if my dad said so, surely he was. Yes, I'd answer sleepily, he's there by the window. But times like these, I looked up at my mom, half seen, and I said, what is it? The crickets, she said. Listen. Standing beside her, aware of the faded print of her dress, the onion smell on her hands, I listened and heard the crickets I always heard at dinner time, their creaking chirps only a regular accompaniment to the day's end. I look up at her again. I guess she was smiling. They make a funny kind of music, don't they? Music. Music was what we heard in church. The choir singing, I Walked in the Garden Alone, or on TV with commercials, or the faded dance rhythm she played all alone. And when I got up at night, sometimes saw her take a hesitant dance step or two. Then she sighed like she often did, but it was a softer sigh than usual, as if it were a kind of release, and sensing her mood, I seized, with all the subtlety of my 8 years, another opportunity. I wish Joyce could stay all summer. She looked down, the cricket's not hurt anymore. You mean you wish her bike could stay? My birthday's in July, I reminded her, and she sighed again. I don't want you to expect a bike, she said. You'll only be disappointed. There's no money this summer for bicycles. I believed her. There would not be a bicycle for my birthday. It had to be my own magic. At all the hard edges of my days, the bright lights in the kitchen as we went in, my sister and Joyce already at the table, My dad in his turtleneck sneaking one last glance at the evening paper. The steam rising from the boiled potatoes and hamburger did nothing to dispel the intoxication, no, the addiction I had developed. After Joyce left, the summer lost focus. Turned into a parade of days without luster. My sister and I picked the new ripening blackberries in the woods and watched my mom roll out the pie dough. We climbed the barbed wire fence into the pasture next door and tried to milk the calf. It kicked me hard as I knelt there fumbling at its underbelly so that I fell backward. That night my mother, bathing me in the tub, saw the hoof-shaped bruise on my stomach and asked me what it was. When I told her, she smiled. "You can't milk calves," she said. "I know," I said. Then she sighed, "And stay out of the neighbor's pasture." Ann and I did avoid the pasture after that. Instead, we played hide and seek in the laurel hedges lining the lawn and got scratched and dirty, or played dolls with the clothespins and Morton salt boxes Mom gave us. But the world seemed listless in the sunshine, as if the breeze couldn't lift your hair unless you cut through it on wings, any wings you could find. "Mom," I said, "I could save my allowance for a whole year and buy a bicycle myself on my next birthday." "In 1 year," she told me, "if you save every penny, you'll have $5. That would maybe buy the reflector light for a bicycle." A lengthy pause while I digested this fact. Then she added, "And Lindy, do not ask your dad. Do not bother your dad with this." "Why not, Mom?" I didn't dare ask, but at night when I lay in bed and heard the thin music on the scratchy records coming in through the bedroom walls, I wondered why she didn't want me to have any hope at all. So I wandered through the summer days and reread Aladdin's Lamp. I looked for elves in the shiny green leaves of the laurel hedges. I wanted to find one with his beard caught in a vine who, when I set him free, would grant me 3 wishes. I listened for the nightingale on the oak tree who would drop a diamond from his beak into my outstretched palm, which would enable me to buy all the world. I looked for an enchanted fish in the dappled waters of the creek, who, when I caught him, would beg me to throw him back and grant me 1 wish in return. I scrutinized the rocks of the gravel of our road, picking up the ones that flashed with mica crystals, rubbing them until my fingers tingled, thinking that this time a genie 10 feet tall would appear and grant my every desire. And I got sick. I lay in bed with my earache and sore throat, and the house and walls seemed to recede, and I was in an island in a quiet ocean of wanting. The world seemed full of possibilities, but somehow I hadn't found the right combination, and slow tears of frustration trickled out the corners of my eyes and made damp spots on the pillowcase. Then I heard them talking in the room next room over. This time the bathroom door was open, and every word was perfectly clear. "Here's $50, my dad said to my mother. "Pay the mortgage and buy some groceries." $50 cash. They held right there in their hands. $50 cash. And they'd said they didn't have money for bicycles. $50 would buy a Superior bicycle. Just the bicycle I wanted. All the wanting in me seemed to swell and turn into joy. Now was the time to wish that my mother's heart would soften, that instead of groceries she'd turn aside from the supermarket and come home instead with a bicycle. Perhaps before I hadn't wished hard enough, or closed my eyes tight enough, or repeated the magic words fast enough, or often enough. But this time, I would do everything just right. And I did, just right, for 4 hours. She came in sighing with exhaustion, carrying a load of groceries, and when I accused her in rage and bitterness of having had the money, she was kind. "Honey," she said, "we have to buy groceries. We can't eat bicycles." Maybe my incantations had softened her to that point. I didn't know then, and sometimes still wonder now. Next Christmas, my dad got me a used bicycle for $5, and I rode it until the front tire went flat. And then it sat and slowly rusted in the garage where my books used to be. It's funny, too, but maybe it's right that when I think of that time, it's not only the wanting or my wishes or my failed belief in magic I should remember, but also the distant tinny sound of music and my mother's sighs.
Minutes for a couple of some questions if you'd like to ask Myrna some questions about writing, her writing habits and so forth. One thing, in my own nervousness, I kind of skipped over a part I have written here at the bottom, which is about, I've read parts of 2 of her young adult novels, and they're both quite interesting. One of them is kind of, it's about a girl who, inhabits the self that she wanted to be, something like It's a Wonderful Life, and she learns the gains and the disadvantages of that. And then the other one is about someone also left behind. But it seems to me in these 2 young adult novels that Myrna has an affinity for the one left out or the one left behind, the one who finds more pleasure in reading than in talking. So if you have a couple more questions for Myrna, you could entertain them.
to know how you really got started. I mean, I know as a child, we all were in school and wrote stories that your grandmother praised and that sort of thing. But as an adult, how did you start? How did you find things that you felt you could write about?
Well, I'm probably not a super successful writer today because there have been many hazards along the road. I remember I wrote a short story in grade school, and it was about the wind talking to the trees, and my mom found it and she thought it was hilarious, and it wasn't meant to be funny. Actually, when I was in 7th grade, I had a teacher who decided that I was brilliant, and he decided that I was culturally deprived, so he took me on as a personal project. And later, when I turned 18, he started courting me, which is not what I meant, not what I meant at all. And I had to kind of abandon him in my dust, but he had all kinds of good influences on me because he made me believe that there was something more there than I learned at home about what I was capable of. Anybody else?
So, what are the two? You talked about some about the memoirs you were writing about one about losing weight, and the other one was about raising boys in Hawaii.
Yeah, I raised 7 boys in Hawaii, as Julie knows, and or Jenny, Julie, yeah. On a street where everybody is LDS, and not only is everybody LDS, but everybody is active LDS. And in Hawaii, all the houses are too small, so my 7 boys were kind of not so much housed in that house as they were contained, but occasionally they bulged out the windows and doors, and then they would each have a friend, and so there might be 14 boys standing in my doorway, in my driveway, and some of them would be smoking or skateboarding, which I've always wanted to get a bumper sticker that says, skateboarding is not a capital crime, but to some people on the street it was. And my husband used to say, we should put a little numbering system outside of the door so that people can just take a number when they come to our door to complain about something that one of the Marler boys has done. Julie, your dad one time said to me about Ben, he was trying to compliment me, but he said, Ben's getting better. He said he hasn't broken anything at our house for a long time, which was kind of the attitude. The name Marler was a hiss and a byword in Light EA for many years, and so it's you really are raising your children in a fishbowl, and when you don't feel like a particularly maternal person, I mean, how did I get 7 children out? It was just like overnight, there they were, and so I think someday I'll have to take that up again. But like I was telling John earlier, I've suppressed a lot of those memories. So.